is Saturday, February 2nd, 2019, and welcome to Flicker Effect. This is episode 281. I'm David Lotz. Joining me this week is Bobby Jackson.
Hey, what's up?
What's up? And that's it. Just me and you, man.
It's rare. Every now and then we'll get one where it's just me and you, and it always reminds me of like the throwback of when it was me, you, and Carlton, and then Carlton left, and then it was just kind of me and you for a little while. So yeah, it's kind of like a little throwback to that.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, just me and you this week. Yeah. I think we've probably got some stuff we've watched to talk about, maybe some news to talk about. So let's just jump right in it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So yeah, like I said, we normally like start with talking about what we've been watching lately. So what have you watched this week?
Well, I've watched, since there's not anything really in the theaters right now to check out, not just yet anyway.
Yeah, not really at all.
No, there's stuff, but it's nothing specifically that I'm like chomping at the bit to watch. So I've just been kind of taking that time to catch up on some shows that came back recently and also on some Netflix stuff. So a couple shows that just came back recently. One was Star Trek Discovery on CBS All Access. And for anyone who doesn't know about that show, it's Discovery is a show that takes place within the timeline of when the USS Enterprise was around with the original crew. It takes place within that same timeline, but the Discovery is on a different mission. And this season, it started off sort of hitting the ground running, and they have Captain Pike on the ship from the original Enterprise that you really only saw in the first episode. And then he is actually a pretty interesting character, and he's very charismatic, I would say, as a captain. The actor, I forget his name, but he played in, unfortunately, the last thing he was in was The Inhumans. That was on ABC, and he played Black Bolt. But and he didn't get to do much in that role, because if anyone knows the character of Black Bolt, he doesn't really talk, and so didn't see him do much. But in this, he's very outgoing and seems like a cool character. And it's interesting in that you didn't obviously get to know the character very well from the original Star Trek. So seeing him here is kind of cool to see how he would have been if you would have gotten a little bit more exposure of that character. And it's I think it's up to 4 episodes now, and I think I've watched 3, and it feels this season more like actual original Star Trek and Next Generation Star Trek, where it feels more like an exploration show or finding different things. Even though that's not specifically what this season is about, it has those elements to where it feels more familiar, as well as expanding upon the things that they started last season. So it's been really, really good.
Yeah, man, I've been dying to like get back into that show from the first season because I got so behind. But one of these days, it hurts as a Star Trek fan that I'm not.
I know and then I was just hearing today, I think, that they said that the Picard series is supposed to come out this year too, and I actually wasn't expecting that. I was thinking it wasn't coming out until next year. So
I hadn't even heard that. So that's surprising. It would be coming out that soon.
Yeah. So, you gotta at some point get back on the Star Trek train, because it's definitely rolling right now, and I'm liking what they're doing with Discovery. So, I'd be curious to see what you think once you're able to really get back into the series again.
Yeah, one of these days. In the meantime, when I get to what I've been watching, you're gonna shake your head and go, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But go on. We'll get to that.
Well, I think at this point, I've kind of succumbed to the fact that you're going to watch the things that tend to grab your attention in the moment of that time. Like, there's a lot of good shows out there that I'm sure either would possibly be on your list or maybe are at least peripherally in your attention span. But I feel like I know you well enough to know that even though these things are on your list or things you really want to see, it's all about really what's calling to you within the limited amount of time that you have to watch stuff. So, and the things that you choose, I just kind of like, okay,
That's cool.
It wouldn't be my choice, but yeah, that's it. If you're watching something, you're watching something.
Well, like, we'll obviously get to it, but like one of my things I've been watching this week is more, it's timing. There's a timing reason to it, but we'll get to it.
Okay. One of the other shows that came back for me is The Magicians on Sci-Fi Channel. And I think I'm going to get it wrong because I don't have it in front of me, but I think this is the 4th season. And it's, once again, very solid. I love the show. It's kind of like if you had an adult version of Harry Potter mixed in with Narnia, Chronicles of Narnia. Mm-hmm. It's this very fantasy yet magic and aspects of I guess these adult-ish characters, maybe in their 20s, late 20s, I'd say. They're still kind of figuring life out while having to deal with everything else that's going on within the world of magic and stuff. So it's a grown-up series for sure, because they drop F-bombs, there's sex and everything else on the show. So it's definitely not for kids, but it's a good solid series. And it already, I think if I remember right, it already got picked up for another season. So it's just doing very well. And I unfortunately don't know too many people who watch it, so it's not like anyone I can talk to about the show, but it's such a good show, and I would suggest it if anyone's looking for something based on what I just mentioned in terms of that kind of crossover field for fantasy and magic and all that kind of stuff that I think would pique other people's interest. So
yeah, that's over on Sci-Fi, and yeah, it just started the 4th season, like you were,
okay, and
it has been renewed for a 5th.
Cool. Yeah, I'm glad I was right on that and wasn't just pulling that out my butt. So,
which is the fact checking department over here. I've got you covered.
Perfect. Another show that I just started recently was Deadly Class, and that's also on Sci-Fi.
Yeah,
and it's based off.
I've been interested in that.
Yeah, so for me, it was when I first saw the previews for it and everything. It didn't completely grab me. I was like, oh, okay. And I knew it was based on a comic or a graphic novel. And it just, for whatever reason, my interest was in the fact that it was being made and produced by the Russo brothers. And it had Benedict Wong in it that I knew, obviously, from Doctor Strange. And it's this essential aspect of this story is about these kids that are in this school for assassins, training to be future assassins, and it takes place in the 80s. And then one of the main characters, the school is made up of cliques, in a sense, of people who come from families that have sent their kids to this school that essentially are training them to be future assassins of America. And there's a bottom class. They're referred to as rats who don't come from anyone. And so they're still accepted into the school, a few amount of them, but they're picked on by pretty much everyone. And it's about this one particular character who is the main lead, and he's a rat, and he's got his own sort of plans and the way he thinks in terms of the lessons being taught by the school and everything. And it's pretty interesting. It takes the aspects of what you would expect in any other genre when you're dealing with high school kids and the different cliques and the popular kids and the nerds and everything. But it gives it a specific bent towards the fact that this is really a deadly class. Like, people can die, and there's all kinds of different things that are going on just beneath the surface of the school. And I'm liking it. It's only, I think I've watched, let's see, maybe 3 episodes. I think they're on the 3rd or 4th episode. And yeah, I'm digging it. So I didn't know if I was going to be into it, and watched the first episode, and I was like, okay, it's fine. And then by second episode, I was definitely on board. So I would say give that a try out there if you're looking for something kind of slightly different than the normal comic book type movie or TV show that's based in hero aspects. This isn't that, and it's something different.
Yeah, I'm curious about it. It's unfortunate it doesn't. I was wondering if it's like available on something like Hulu, which it doesn't look like it is, but. Maybe I could just download the Sci-Fi app and sign into that. Maybe watch those previous episodes. I'll have to try that.
You probably could, actually. And I remember the first episode was available for free on YouTube, I want to say, or something, or even on the Sci-Fi app or something.
I saw that the pilot was on YouTube. I don't know if it still is or if that was a permanent thing or what, but
yeah. So that's one way people can catch it, at least to get a taste of it, to see if it's enough to interest them in checking it out.
Right.
And the other thing that I got a chance to watch was this documentary that came out. It's been in the theater, but it just recently debuted on CNN. I heard about it and missed it the first time it was on, and then I set my recorder for it to record when it came back on, and it's called 3 Identical Strangers. Have you heard of it?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. So it's been one of the movies I've been hearing on some of the podcasts and different websites that I visit, and it's the story of, as the title says, these identical strangers, and there's like the way they come about in terms of finding out that they're a part of a set of triplets. It was very interesting because one, and this isn't telling too much of the story, but one of the guys goes to college, and everyone's is starting to like give him kind of props and be like, hey, what's up? I didn't think you were coming back. And he's like confused. And then he runs into a guy who at the school knew a guy who looked exactly like him, but he knew that it wasn't him because he knew that the other guy wasn't coming back to school. So he was like, asked the guy, hey, are you adopted? And the guy's like, yeah. And he goes, is your birthday such and such? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, you're not going to believe this, but you have a twin. And then obviously the guy is like dumbfounded because he doesn't really know or believe that. And they go and call the other guy, and then they confirm it, and they meet up, and then they find out like, wow, okay, we are twins. And then through this, there's this big story that comes out in the newspapers and everything about these 2 identical guys that have found each other after all these years, and they're about 19 or so. And then throughout this story, someone else catches wind of this fact that there's these 2 identical twins, and they see it in the paper, and then they find the 3rd twin that way. And so it becomes this huge national story, and they start appearing on like a lot of the talk shows of the time, like Phil Donahue, and just like going on local news and just everything that you would imagine. And they hit it off sort of instantly as these triplets, and they find that they have the same sort of mannerisms and same aspects. And then, this is all within like the first hour of the documentary, but then it takes a twist, and that's all I'll say. I'll leave it there. And so I will say it was very compelling watching this documentary. it went in a direction I had no clue that it was going. And so I would highly suggest it to watch it. I'm not sure where else it's available right now. Like I said, I caught it on CNN when it came on last week, I believe. So maybe it's still out there, but it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, quickly like Googling it, I see that it's they're still airing it occasionally on CNN. For example, like tonight, it's going to be airing at 9 and 11.
Okay.
So I don't know for in future days for the next week or two if that's going to be the case, but probably. Yeah.
And obviously by the time this episode comes out, it will already be past tonight. So maybe hopefully somebody can catch it out there on CNN at a later date and time. Maybe you can even record it and get a chance to watch it later.
Yeah, maybe I should. It does look too like it's available for I guess rental. Like it pops up here that it's available on Amazon Prime for $4. So
okay. Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. I like the week before when I watched the Fire Festival, which I thought was very interesting as well. This is right up there also in terms of how the story just takes hold of you and grabs you and keeps you kind of on the edge of your seat as you're watching this thing. So yeah, it's worth checking out.
Nice.
And finally, there's a new movie that came out on Netflix yesterday, The Velvet Buzzsaw, which is Dan Gilroy's movie. He wrote and directed, and it has Jake Gyllenhaal in it, Rene Russo, John Malkovich, Toni Collette, and Daveed Diggs. And you like with that cast is obviously pretty all-star. I mean, there's a lot of good names in there. And Dan Gilroy did one of my favorite movies a few years ago when he did Nightcrawler that had Rene Russo and Jake Gyllenhaal in it as well. And so matching all these people back up again, it's this story of like an art dealership or an art house that one of the workers there discovers a man who has died and left all these paintings. And she essentially takes the paintings, and they, in this art world, they find that these paintings are invaluable and decide to sell them. But as they have this sort of aspect of the story where they're getting deeper into digging into this guy who died, there's something essentially supernatural about these paintings, and it takes this sort of horror movie turn to it. And I will say, based on concept, it's very interesting, and I thought like the idea of it was a cool way to dress up a horror film, but in execution it was just whatever. It was kind of okay. So I don't know. Did you get a chance to watch it?
I did. I also watched this, and actually, if you go check out Spoiler Effect, Michelle and I recorded a spoiler effect for this. But yeah, I watched it, and I will say this was an interesting exercise in seeing a movie completely blind for me, because I never watched a trailer for this. And the only thing I had ever heard about it was when Yasha spoke about it on this podcast, I think an episode or two back, when the trailer dropped. And he talked about it a little bit. And all I really knew was that it was made by Dan Gilroy, which, by the way, I had never seen a film by him before. He's, as you mentioned, he's directed Nightcrawler. And also that the film with Denzel Washington, which the name is escaping me. Roman J. Israel Esquire.
There you go. Yes.
Yeah, I never saw either of those movies. And Nightcrawler is a movie I have heard a ton about. A lot of rave reviews to that movie. It's just one of those movies I've just missed. Trust me, I've always wanted to see it. It just hasn't happened. So yeah, and I never watched the trailer for this. I had seen like a still image, and that is it. So it was an interesting experience watching this completely blind. And I will say, I do not think it was to the movie's benefit watching this movie, having no idea what I was getting into. Like, I feel like if I had watched a trailer, which I haven't watched yet, I kind of wish I had watched it before we were recording this. And unfortunately, I haven't yet. I'm curious to watch the trailer to see if I then still feel like, man, I should have watched this trailer first. Because I think it would have helped to have gone into this with at least some sense of the genre movie quality that this movie has, which I went into it going, okay, so this is a movie made by this guy that made Nightcrawler, which is apparently this really great film. And look at this movie. It's got, like you've already said, it's got Jake Gyllenhaal and Toni Collette and Rene Russo and John Malkovich and Daveed Diggs. And I mean, like, look at this cast, and this director is apparently great, right? And I watched it and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It kind of caught me off guard, I guess, is maybe a way to put it. I think the other thing is too, I don't know. I feel like maybe for those people who do kind of either follow or even exist in the kind of the world of art, maybe this would just be more entertaining to them, because this is obviously making a statement. You know, I'm not going to get into spoilers here, but it's definitely making a statement about the kind of people with way too much money spending way too much money on art that really doesn't even deserve some of the recognition it's getting. And it's obviously making a statement on that. And for me, you know, I love art, but I don't follow the art world. It's just not something I follow. And it's, you know, I feel like this isn't a movie necessarily for me in that sense. I mean, I think the one entertaining thing about this film is just seeing these actors that we all know and love, like in these kind of roles, which are kind of interesting, different roles for them, kind of fun roles, you know? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I found myself imagining, like, I'm watching this movie and I'm most of the way through it, and I'm thinking, you know what, if this movie was acted just as well as it's being acted by these actors, but they were a bunch of unknowns, you would watch this and go, oh, this is kind of subpar direct-to-DVD fare, in my opinion. Yeah. You know? But the fact that it is Jake Gyllenhaal and Rene Russo and Toni Collette, it's like, oh, it's kind of fun to watch them play these parts. But if these were nobodies, I'd be like, what is this? Like, but so, I mean, I feel like you and I kind of, it sounds like we have the same general opinion on it. It was kind of, I mean, I didn't hate it. It was kind of entertaining. Mm-hmm. I feel like if you go into it with the right mindset, like, hey, I'm going to turn on Netflix and watch kind of a interesting, kind of almost silly movie. It's not silly. Silly is not the best way to describe it, but just, I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I don't think I went into it having watched a trailer either. I think I knew just I think I knew just a little bit about what the story was about, or at least that it dealt with art and some other aspects, but I didn't know much. And I would say I went into it not completely cold, but fairly cold. And yeah, it's kind of like you said, it's just sort of there, and it doesn't seem like it seems like it found the right home, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
It doesn't seem like something that should have been in the theater, and it just seems like it'd be something that, like you said, if you kind of are familiar with this world, or just you're passing by Netflix and you saw these different people and maybe watched the little teaser that they usually give if you kind of hold it on something, then maybe it'd be something for you to watch and have a little bit of interest in. But if you kind of have an aspect of knowing what this is, and you've seen Dan Gilroy's other stuff, then there's a higher expectation, especially with some of the actors that are in there. And it just feels kind of like it's, it doesn't have enough in it in terms of if it's trying to be a genre specific, like in horror, it doesn't feel like it has enough weight to it, if that makes sense. It just feels very like it's trying to ride this line, and it doesn't do justice to either the way that it's trying to tell the story.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. It could have been way better. It could have had more impact. And like you said, it is trying to convey a specific message. And even in art in general, I mean, you could kind of look at it as the way that whether it's movies, TV, music, the way that we consume these things and how we also critique it, and just a larger sort of conversation about that is being at play in the movie. But it doesn't do enough to really kind of sort of massage those edges of that commentary. It's just kind of surface level of it. And then it's, like I said, sort of intermixed with this horror element that it's just kind of flat.
Yeah, I think if I had known I was going into a movie that was like, this is kind of a satire, I guess. Like, don't take this too seriously. It doesn't seem to be making a kind of a deep statement. Like, then I'd be like, oh, okay, but I don't know. I guess given what I had heard about Nightcrawler, and I went into it, I think definitely with the wrong mindset. And then it takes the movie a while to kind of reveal that, like, oh, this is kind of a horror film. Like, I didn't expect this. Maybe if I'd done that too, I don't know. I'll never know. Maybe I still wouldn't have enjoyed it. But yeah, that's just kind of where I am. I will say, Michelle's not here. She wasn't able to record with us, but she did seem to enjoy it quite a bit more than I did. So, yeah, for those wondering if you should watch it, and I would say, like, if anywhere were to ask me, like, oh, hey, I just want to watch something on Netflix, is it worth watching? I mean, again, I haven't watched the trailer yet, so I don't know what the trailer makes this movie look like, but I feel like if you watch the trailer and it does kind of give you that sense of like, hey, just something, don't take it too seriously, and you just want to kind of have a enjoyable kind of random watch, just yeah, it might be worth it. I mean, it's interesting to see these actors in these parts. I especially kind of like Toni Collette in her role, but Jake Gyllenhaal too. He's good in it. But I don't know. Yeah,
everyone's performance was pretty good, except for there was a few, it seemed like, line readings that the main actress had in it that seemed sort of lifeless to me. But essentially everybody else I thought did their roles pretty well, and Jake Gyllenhaal continues to be like a chameleon. I mean, he can do no wrong in terms of whatever kind of character he's playing. But it's just that the story, I think, fails these actors a lot in terms of what the movie is as a whole.
Right. And I found it odd too. I don't know what your experience was going into Netflix to watch this, but I don't know. Like, I get that Netflix is different for everybody when you sign into your profile, and it suggests certain movies based on your, things you watch and the things you like. But, normally they definitely have movies that they're kind of pushing, or featured films. And when I went into the app to find this, like, it was not at all like placing this movie in a prominent position of like, ooh, look at this new movie we have by this, well-regarded director and all these great actors. Like, I had to search for it to find it, like, which I found kind of odd. And this movie just dropped literally yesterday, as of this recording, on the 1st, and it just premiered a week ago at Sundance. I just found that really weird that they weren't like at all like pushing it in my app. I'm like, they just still had, was it Polar featured as like the featured film. I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah. It seems kind of odd. I'm like, are you guys like don't have any faith in this? Like, you don't think it's good? Like, like it's kind of weird to me. Anyway,
you know what? And on a slightly side note, and as we're talking about Netflix, with them constantly adding so much content and more coming out, not only just within this year but in the future, I don't know why they don't do something similar to what HBO does, and that I've been watching True Detective this latest season, and it's been really good. And I'm sure you've seen it too when you watch Game of Thrones, is that right before Game of Thrones starts or one of their original series start, they show like these, based to music or whatever, snippets of some of their other shows to get you to be able to watch it.
Right.
Netflix should do something similar in this, like, they have so many original programming for different things. Why not create like a little bumper in front of what you're about to watch to just say, hey, these things are here, maybe you might like it? And because they do nothing to really showcase it in a sense, unless they really want to, like how they did with Roma. But other things seem to get the shaft in that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that specifically came up recently. Like it was something Netflix was planning on doing. And I feel like there was pushback because I think the way it was like presented, at least out in like social media and in news, was like, oh, they're going to start adding ads to your films or your TV shows. And people of course react to that like, oh, wait, I'm already paying this much for Netflix and it hasn't had ads up until now. So why should they add ads? I mean, and I get what you're saying. Like what you're describing would not bother me because you're right. Like when I go into HBO, I'm even watching old Game of Thrones episodes now, and their app is designed that it's showing me stuff that is new, like right in front of the episode. And I believe Amazon Prime does the same thing. I don't watch a lot of stuff on there, but if I remember correctly, when I have watched things as a Prime member, it will many times add just a quick little, bumper on the front of like, hey, things that are exclusive to Amazon Prime. And it's fine. It doesn't really bug me. As long as you're not cutting into the middle of my programming to show me ads, like, I don't care. So, yeah, I don't know why they don't really do that.
And the other aspect is that it's not an ad. It's not like I'm watching a commercial for Tide.
Right.
Or like, right. It's still advertising at least their programming that they have for their streaming service. So it's like, it's a good way of discovery, and especially because they don't have a really good way for discovery on their app. It's just kind of the Wild Wild West still, and that's been a complaint for so many years. You'd think someone would have addressed it by now.
Yeah, it seems weird, but
yeah.
So yeah, feel like we're on the same page with Velvet Buzzsaw. It's interesting. I'll say that. I still want to see Nightcrawler. I haven't lost any faith in that movie, but
yeah. That's the one to see for sure. In fact, I think, and I could be wrong at this point, but I remember at some point in time last year, it was available on Netflix. I don't know if it's still there, but
okay.
You can see it there on Netflix.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've been watching. What about you?
I mean, as far as new things, Velvet Buzzsaw is it. That's really all I've seen. I'm continuing with my Game of Thrones marathon. I'm in season 2 now.
Okay.
So moving along with that, the only other thing that I kind of alluded to earlier that I started watching this week, which is it's going to appear very random. It's not completely random for me, but I started watching actually the HBO miniseries John Adams.
Is that the one with
Paul Giamatti?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of his name. Okay. Yeah, that's a few years old.
Yeah, it was in 2008.
Wow. 10 years, 11 years at this point, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but I'm like, man. But also there's I'm watching it. I've only seen the first 2 episodes, and I believe it's how many episodes is it? I believe it's 7 or 8 episodes. It's 7. So I've seen the first 2, and there's a child, one of John Adams's children is played by an actor, and I'm watching it going, man, this kid looks really familiar. And I realize he's in Game of Thrones. But in Game of Thrones, he's also a child, but definitely older than this, a little bit older. Anyway, it took me. It's still like, even seeing that kind of helped me, because at the time I couldn't remember what year this show came out, and I'm seeing this kid and going, when I finally realized who he was, I'm like, wait, this is younger than, oh yeah, that's right. I guess this was before Game of Thrones. I mean, Game of Thrones has been around for that yeah, a while.
Would you have known that if you hadn't been rewatching Game of Thrones? Did you you would have recognized them before that?
That's hard to say because I might have, but there's no doubt that I had just seen that kid. It's the child who, and see, I'm even recently watching Game of Thrones, and I'm not going to get these names right, but the Stark mother, her sister, remember? You know, and her sister has a child who's basically at her side all the time.
Oh yeah,
that kid.
God, I forgot about them.
Yeah, that's the thing about rewatching Game of Thrones, man.
What happened to that kid?
I don't remember. I don't think we ever find out, do we? I don't remember.
Okay,
I'll let you know when I finish rewatching.
I know what happened to the mother, but I don't remember the.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Okay.
Anyway. So yeah, and the reason behind kind of rewatching that is, so this is a show that Michelle has mentioned to me many times. Oh, you haven't watched John Adams? You got to watch John Adams. And it came up recently because we are going to see Hamilton soon. And I think with that in mind is why it came up in her head, like, hey, I've been thinking about rewatching John Adams. Like, you should watch John Adams. So I'm like, all right, fine. Threw on a couple episodes. So, I mean, obviously the show's 10 years old. There's nothing new to report. I will say so far, I'm like, I am definitely a lover of American history. I just find it fascinating. Mm-hmm. So just in that respect, I find it fascinating. I mean, I will say the first 2 episodes so far, especially that second episode, which is all about the Declaration of Independence. It feels like the show's a little too much on fast forward for me. Like, for me, as someone who loves this stuff, I'm like, man, you could have done a whole season on that first episode, and then a whole season on this second episode, and a whole season probably on the next episode, the third episode, but instead we're getting a miniseries where it's just 7 episodes. And I feel like the way it's going through information, it's like, I feel like you're fast forwarding through this a bit too much, but at the same time, I'm guessing most people are probably just fine with the way it is. Obviously, I know the show was really well received when it came out, so I don't know. But anyway, I'm just mentioning that's the only other new thing to me that I've been watching.
So you're definitely in to watch the whole thing then, though. I
mean, yeah, it's only 7 episodes. I mean, they are long. Like that second episode was basically, it was an hour and a half. They're little movies, but it's just a mini series. I'll watch the 7 episodes and move on.
So I guess okay. That kind of wraps up what you've been watching.
Yeah. That's, unless I'm forgetting something. Well, that's pretty much it for me for this week.
I have a question for you. As we're talking about this, and you mentioned that you're watching John Adams. What, in general, do you watch? Is there anything that you watch like on a regular basis?
Not that's airing right now. Like, I will say the only things that I feel like the past couple years that I feel like I've watched pretty religiously, like Game of Thrones is definitely like, that is the show that I'm like, I watch it when it airs. And if I can't watch it when it airs, I am watching it as quickly as possible because 1, I just love the show. And 2, it's definitely that show where it's like, it is really in the zeitgeist of everyone talks about it. You can't scroll through Twitter or Facebook and not see things about it. So I'm like, I can't have it spoiled. Like, and that's not to say, like, if I say I do miss an episode and I can't watch it for a day or 2, it's not like I can't resist social media. I just won't use social media for a couple days. But that show I watch, Silicon Valley, I watch as it airs usually. That's about it.
You're caught up on that show?
Yeah, I'm caught up in that. Yeah, there's not a lot that I'm like regularly watching. Like network TV, there's almost nothing. Like,
can you?
I could. I just don't. So
there's nothing else.
Like I feel like the one show I used to kind of regularly watch, like Big Bang Theory. I don't know. I've kind of lost interest in it. Like, to me, these later seasons of that show have just like, it's just not the same anymore.
No.
And it's fine. Shows evolve, but I feel like it's morphed into a different kind of oh man, what's the word? It's just, I don't know, just a different setup with the cast and the relationships and everything. It's just not what I fell in love with when that show first started. And I'm like, it's not for me. I know, it's confusing, right?
Well, I mean, in a certain sort of way, it kind of is, just because I just always assumed that you've got a pretty busy household and you work and everything else, and you also want to make time to go out and live life and stuff. Yeah. So I figure most of it is because you're doing those things and don't really have time to watch anything. But when you say you could watch something, it surprises me because there's a lot of good content, because we're living in sort of the golden age of TV and everything that's available. So I would think that there's got to be something out there that's, you say, okay, I'm going to make time for this hour-long show once a week that comes on and get into it.
Well, and that's the thing too, like when you brought up Deadly Class, like that's a new show that it piqued my interest seeing commercials for it. And I'm like, it's new, I could jump into that. So my problem is I have a real issue with, once I get too far behind, then I have to decide. I'm like, well, there's a lot of shows I haven't watched or I'm behind on. So which of those do I choose? But you're right. I feel like I need to like stay on top of, oh man, this new show looks like it could be worth checking out. I need to jump into it now and not get too far behind. And then, like Deadly Class, you said it's like maybe like 4 episodes in, maybe I'll watch those 4 episodes and fall in love with it, and I'll keep up with that. But another show that came in mind, Stranger Things. I've always watched that right when they release it.
Okay. I guess I think, like, in terms of, like, let's say, because we talked about Star Trek Discovery, and that's a show that you've been watching, but you just sort of fell off on. Like, I think, like, what if you just were to pick 5 shows, whether you're behind on them or whether they're new, and you throw them in the bowl of destiny and let it decide which show you should pick up? And you're unless you felt the drive and the need to binge, then like let's say the bowl chose Star Trek Discovery for you, and unless you feel like you have to catch up to current season, you could just still watch it as 1 episode per week and catch up when you catch up, because
eventually I'll catch up.
And especially since this show isn't on like a yearly cycle, it doesn't seem like it. I think by the time this season ends, I don't know that the next season won't come back until next year at some point, maybe. And it's not like it's a 22 episode seasons kind of thing. Right. So it seems like that would be a show you could probably catch up on even before this season were to end, if you just watched an episode a week.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. Absolutely. I should, especially with Star Trek Discovery, I need to get on top of that.
Yeah, I would just think, like, especially, well, maybe not especially, but it just feels like we're sort of in a little bit of a lull in terms of movies right now.
Yeah,
so it's like, oh, this would be the perfect time to kind of jump back into something.
Yeah, no, I agree with
you. You want to talk some news?
Yeah, we got a little time. What's been going on?
Well, we got a trailer this week for the Hobbs and Shaw, which is the spinoff for Fast and Furious. And in the Hobbs and Shaw, it's with The Rock and Jason Statham. Did you get a chance to watch a trailer?
I did watch that.
Oh, okay. So Yasha, he's not here, but he did text in our text thread that he was looking forward to it, that it looks awesome.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts? I'm curious.
Mixed feelings on this trailer. In one respect, it looks like it could be a lot of fun. In the sense of, hey, it's kind of a buddy action comedy almost between like The Rock and Jason Statham. I can get behind that with Idris Elba as the villain. Okay. Now, I don't know if I was really expecting like the villain to be this kind of like super powered enhanced being thing. That was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. So I was kind of unsure what to think about that. I don't know. But so it looks like a buddy kind of action comedy film, but at the same time, it's kind of has this Fast and Furious vibe to it. And I can dig that. That's cool. Like, so, I mean, overall, I will say it looks like it could be fun. I will say as a trailer goes, I found the trailer like kind of annoying. Like, and I say that,
so?
I don't know. There's a lot of times I think we talk about trailers and I usually kind of bring up like how the trailer is actually edited and put together. And there was something about the way that this trailer was done. And I only watched it the one time. I meant to watch it again, especially with the way they used music in it, is it felt kind of jumpy. It felt like it didn't, I don't know. It felt a little all over the place. Like, okay. It didn't feel well edited is basically what I'm trying to say. And it kind of annoyed me. There was times where it jumped around and then would jump back into this theme or this piece of music they were using and then kind of jump out of it and then back in it. And it just felt wrong. If that makes sense. I didn't like the trailer as trailers go, but the movie looks like it could be fun. I haven't watched the most. I think it was just that last Fast and Furious film.
You didn't watch that one?
No, I never saw it. But I've always been one that's mostly defended that franchise, you know, to everyone who feels like, oh man, that's just a stupid, terrible, like, franchise. It's, you know, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on this show where it's actually, it went through kind of a rebuild, how, you know, like 4 movies in, and it really did something. I thought that was entertaining, and then it started to go off the deep end. Like eventually those last couple movies, I feel like I was like, oh, okay, now I'm done.
Yeah, they've definitely been ramping up the over the top cartoony aspect of the series within the last couple, especially the last one. I like Charlize Theron, and in the Fast and Furious movie, she just really felt kind of like a cartoon villain, and there's no intricate layer to her as a villain. So, and it was not that she was horrible or bad in the role. It was just her sort of having fun with it and everything, which is fine. But it just seems like everything that surrounds those movies, it's like they're constantly trying to figure out a way to one up themselves, and it shows. So that started to wane on me a little bit in the last movie. But the thing that I guess really kind of grinds me is that Jason Statham's character was revealed to be behind the death of Han in the movies for the Fast and Furious. And that character, he had been first featured in Tokyo Drift, but then, you know, they kind of end up showing you that character prior to a lot of the things that happen based on the numbering of the movies and whatnot. And so when you see that Jason Statham kills Han to try to get revenge for his brother that was in one of the other Fast and Furious movies, it's like, okay, well, he's a bad guy. And then in the last Fast and Furious movie, it's kind of like I wouldn't say they kind of it's not like they brush over it, but at the same time they don't really fully address it. And so then you go into this movie. I remember when they first announced that they were doing a Hobbs and Shaw, I was like, well, why? Like, he's not a good guy. And in the trailer they kind of show that they don't like each other, but it's kind of like, yes, granted, the character that The Rock plays, Hobbs, didn't like really know Han like that, and so it wasn't like it was his friend per se. But at the same time, it's like we're supposed to kind of care about Jason Statham's character, but yet if you've been following the movies, why would you be invested in it? So it's just very weird for me from that perspective, from a story perspective. But if I pull myself away from the story perspective and just look at it as from what the trailer gives, there's a decent amount of action to it, and I'm sure there's going to be more within the film itself because David Leitch is directing, who helped direct the John Wick, and he did the one with Charlize Theron that I'm forgetting the name of, but it didn't do anything to me in that trailer that looked inventive. It just kind of looked like the same type of action you normally would get, but just with Jason Statham and The Rock being able to do the action. So it didn't really move the needle for me. It was just kind of like, yeah, I know I'm going to see it, but this trailer didn't get me excited to see it.
Yeah, I guess like kind of with what you're saying, back when the movie was first announced, especially because I haven't seen that last movie. Was it Furious 7 or Fast 7 or
8, I think.
Was there 8?
Yeah, because the next one is 9, and then the last one is supposed to be 10. So,
oh wow, man, I'm behind. I'm so thrown off. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so Furious 7 came out in 2015, but he was in, because it looks like Jason Statham is credited as being in 6 and 7, and.
Because he is sort of like in a tag scene of.
Oh,
6,
that's when we seen. Okay, now I'm getting my bearings. As to when that happened. So that scene was at the end of 6. Mm-hmm. So he's really featured in 7.
Correct.
And then it's funny because now, for the life of me, I'm with you. I'm with you in that I was at first. When it was announced that this was going to be a movie and these two were going to be like working together, I was confused because I was like, well, wait a second. Isn't he a bad guy? And not only that, but The Rock's character, all of these guys are kind of, in a way, bad guys. They're definitely not abiding by the law. But what was The Rock's character? Didn't he work for like the FBI or?
It's some sort of government organization. Yeah. I can't remember the specific one, but yeah, I want to say DEA, but it's probably not that.
So this guy is law enforcement, and this guy is completely the opposite of that. I'm confused. How is this going to work? And then for the life of me, I'm like, wait, I can't remember what really happens with Jason Statham's character in that movie that he was in, Furious 7. I don't remember.
Well, he spent most of the time trying to get revenge on the crew, right, and fighting against everyone. And then he gets, if I'm remembering right, he gets sent to prison. He gets caught and sent to prison. And then in 8, he gets out, released or something, in order to he's going after Charlize Theron because I think he worked for her at some point, or someone did. Mm-hmm. And so he had his own motives for going after her, and which kind of aligned with the team going after her, because that's when Toretto was working for her because he or she had leverage over him.
Right. Okay.
And so, yeah.
Well, overall, I watched the trailer. I'm like, okay. I just didn't like the trailers. Trailers go.
Yeah. So, well, it'll be big and it'll do tons amount of money because it's part of that franchise and it's got The Rock in it. So it's not like it's going to be hurting.
No.
One other thing that I wanted to pick your brain about, DC, they kind of have planted their flag a little bit for the year 2021. They mentioned that they have a Batman movie coming out with Matt Reeves, and within that, it does seem as though Ben Affleck is out, and we don't know in terms of who will be putting on the cowl. And then we also kind of got confirmation that, well, for sure that James Gunn is writing a Suicide Squad movie. And I don't know if the ink is dry or if it's still negotiating, but the idea of him directing that Suicide Squad movie, which is set to come out in August of 2021, with Batman coming out in, I think it was June of 2021, June 25th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I forget which outlet I saw that definitely... It seemed to write it as he is definitely directing that movie. But I don't have it in front of me, so don't quote us on that. But
yeah,
I'm pretty certain that's happening. And then, yeah, like what jumping back and forth, but then like going to the Batman, indeed, Deadline reported that, not only is the movie dated for June 25th, 2021, but they are saying that from what they're hearing, indeed, Ben Affleck will not be back. So it will be a new Batman.
Yeah, which is, for me, bittersweet because I did like Ben Affleck in the role. But I guess overall, I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are, because we all know your thoughts on Aquaman. And, you have stated that there's a level of interest that you're looking towards Shazam for. And then obviously you liked Wonder Woman. And we don't know anything about this Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, but that has a potential when you have someone like that in that role to be a good movie. And then now we didn't really talk about it, but there's some stuff coming out for Birds of Prey, which features Harley Quinn, and Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. Are you starting to get more excited for the DC universe now, or are you still kind of like kind of arms folded, not really sure what to make of things just yet?
Overall, I'm optimistic. I know I came out of Aquaman and I was on here saying, if we get more of this, I'm done. And if we do, I would be very unhappy with that. But at the same time, I am definitely a fan of the idea, which seems to be where they're going here, is just making individual films and allowing directors to do what they want to do with those movies and not so much be worried about these movies tying into each other. And I'm definitely a fan of that, because so far anyway, DC has not done a good job of let's make a big universe, and they just definitely seem to be trying to jump into all of that way too quickly. But this Joker film, from the still images we've seen, we've obviously seen no footage yet, really. It seems like it's promising. And Matt Reeves, I have all the confidence that this is going to be a solid Batman movie based on what he's done so far. And I'm very excited about, as it's being called now, the Batman. He's said that may not necessarily be the title, but and even with the idea that's been said that, I don't know if this is true, but it's being reported out there that he's talking about using multiple villains, which usually I react to that of, oh God, no. Like anytime we've had movies with too many villains, it's always just, oh, there's too many villains. But for some reason, him doing it and his confidence in that there must be a reason and a story, like I'm all in, especially too because it sounds like this movie is going to really focus on the detective side of Batman, which we really have never seen on film.
Right.
And that's exciting. So I'm very excited about the Batman movie. And I'm, a lot of these movies as individual, just DC films, I'm excited about. Like the Birds of Prey film. I mean, yeah, the teaser we get is basically, it looks like a wardrobe test.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I don't really have much of an opinion on yet, because I'm just like, I don't know what we're getting. But based on the cast, I'm excited.
And Suicide Squad.
And Suicide Squad with James Gunn, I'm interested. I'd like to think I would be like, oh my God, James Gunn, like this is going to be exciting. And I do love James Gunn, and I was bummed, and I still am upset that he's not returning to Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's insane.
Right.
I say that too, though, going, I really didn't love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So, I don't fall into that camp of, oh, James Gunn can do no wrong. Like, I don't think that's the case, actually. So, we'll see what he does with Suicide Squad, because that first film was not good. So, but it made money, hence why we're getting a sequel. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting to have him on board writing and directing it.
It's what I find interesting about him writing and directing it is that if you just take what he's done already in this superhero world with what he did at Marvel, and you look at the Guardians, and he took a team of characters that nobody knew for the most part, and not only did he make them household names and characters that people loved, he also took the source material and massaged it a little, because as that iteration stands that we have in the movies, that wasn't necessarily the first Guardians of the Galaxy team. And so it's a similar kind of aspect with Suicide Squad, in that there's been lots of different people who have been in the Suicide Squad and a lot of different interesting characters. So to me, it's like knowing James Gunn's eclectic aspect of his personality. I feel like he'll pick pretty interesting characters to be part of this Suicide Squad, and to see what he does with them. That's where my interests lie in terms of how he crafts that particular narrative. With the Batman thing, yeah, as you mentioned, with Matt Reeves directing, he's absolutely a director that you can feel fairly confident about. I mean, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that he's done that I didn't like. And knowing that he had an idea essentially for the Batman movie that he's going to do, and that he's also leaning in heavy on the detective skills, is something that immediately grabs me, because that's something that I've always wanted to see in a Batman movie, is the fact that he's called the world's greatest detective, and we've never seen it to a large degree on screen. And so I remember at one point in time, someone mentioned, like, what if you could see a Batman movie done in the vein of Seven or something like that? And I was like, oh, that, you know, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet.
I don't know that he'll go that dark or that in that way, but you know, just in general, the idea of it makes you feel like you're going to get something fresh and new and a different take, and I'm excited for that. And the curiosity comes into play, is that, one, what time frame will this movie take place? Because he's stated before, or I don't know if it's public knowledge that he stated it, but it seems like it's just been reported out there that he's looking for a younger Batman. So does that mean this takes place in the past, or do they just kind of just wash away continuity and just say it takes place in current, and he's, you know, just a different actor, whatnot? And so there's that has me curious. And the same thing with Suicide Squad. There's those questions there. Will they bring back Will Smith as Deadshot, or Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, or is it all new characters and not even acknowledging the older characters? So it's kind of like they've got that mystery aspect going for them too, where we don't know certain things beyond just not knowing about the movie in and of themselves, right, like plot details and stuff like that. So it's they have me kind of curious there. And the only thing I feel like is missing for me from DC, beyond the obvious, is you know, the thing that's missing, that's the obvious thing to me, is another Superman movie. But beyond that, I feel like the thing that's missing for me is incorporating a new Green Lantern movie in this universe somehow, because that would work really well on screen. And if they did it right, and you get glimpses of what that could be like when you see the Green Lantern Corps in the original movie with Ryan Reynolds, but done properly, that could be something special also. So aside from Superman, that's the only other thing I'm really waiting for DC to kind of throw out there.
Right. Yeah, the Green Lantern thing just seems, I mean, and they've announced a couple times, you know, a movie that's obviously not happening. And it just, I don't know, it feels like they're still really hesitant to go back to a movie where it is pretty mostly regarded as being pretty bad by most people. And yeah, I don't know. They seem scared of it, you know?
I feel like they're scared of it mostly because they don't have there was a statement, I don't know if it was by Toby Emmerich or if it was Walter Hamada, but one of the guys one of them had mentioned the aspect of the direction and focus for DC right now with their movies is being auteur driven, director driven kind of movies. And I feel like if that's the case, maybe they haven't had the right director step up to want to take on the Green Lantern for them to really have faith in it. Because, like you said, that first movie had left a bad taste in people's mouths. But to a certain degree, even though it made money, same thing could be said for Suicide Squad. But with James Gunn attached to it, they're willing to roll the dice and think that they can get a better outcome this time, at least critically. Obviously, it made money, so there's that. But at least to have the more people sort of backing it, they get someone like James Gunn. So I feel like maybe they just haven't had the right person come in for a Green Lantern that has an idea or a passion for it or the want for that movie. So they're just kind of relying on the things that they have right now that they feel can work and waiting. And they don't probably feel any urgency to put a Green Lantern movie out there anytime soon, which makes sense because it's not tying into anything right now. So why roll the dice on it if there's nothing really that they're confident about?
Right. And yeah, I'm with you in terms of Superman. Like, I mean, I've said again and again, it would be nice to, to have a Man of Steel sequel, but I don't see that happening. I mean, as much as I love Henry Cavill in the role, it seems like he's done. And if anything, with them kind of going on a different track with these, kind of individual movies, fine, recast Superman and do something different with an interesting director. But I feel like if they're going to do that, they're going to wait some time before they do that. I don't know.
Yeah, and the other possibility is that I read something somewhere, but it didn't seem like it was from a big publication, so I didn't put a ton of weight into it. But I had read on something the idea that maybe Warner Brothers is going to lean towards Supergirl and have her
I've
be
heard
the
that
prominent
somewhere too,
Yeah, which, that would, for me, kind of suck just because it's like they're gun shy of Superman, and then that they feel as though this might spark interest because it's a female character, and that may drive more interest, which it could. But I mean, Superman is Superman, and it seems so counterintuitive to put him on the back burner because he keeps being put on the back burner so many times, since the Brandon Routh movie.
Especially too when you have a show. I guess it's the same thing as with the Flash, and everyone was all like, "Oh, you've recast the Flash for the movies, and we have a show." And
right.
And I liked Flash and Justice League, but at the same time, I'm not clamoring to see a Flash film right now. And Supergirl, I don't watch Supergirl, but if I wanted in Supergirl content, I'd go watch the show. It seems funny to me that then you'd make a movie and recast it, I'm sure. And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you.
One day they'll get their act together. I mean, you can only not do Superman for so long. He has to be a part of things at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, with that, I think it's time to wrap things up. As always, we'd love to hear back from everyone listening. You can email us at feedback@flickereffect.com. You can reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram at @flicker_effect. And we're also on YouTube. You can find us there at youtube.com/flickereffect. With that, I'm David Lott.
I'm Bobby Jackson.
Thanks for listening.